How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name's Josh Hutchinson, and I've got John Binkle with me here today. How you doing, John?
I'm good, brother. The missus and I won a costume contest on Monday night, dressed as 78-year-old couple named Otis and Alma. And
Oh,
it turns out
nice.
it turns out I do a really great old man voice, and I dance pretty well with a walker. So, how was Halloween
Nice.
for y'all?
Can you give us an example of this old man voice?
Let me see if I can get myself in that place.
Oh, wow,
Elma!
that's really good.
Elma!
Yeah, so I apparently kept that character going for the entirety of the evening. So
that's
won
fantastic.
pretty handedly in the costume contest, actually.
That's awesome, man. Was there a prize?
Yeah, we won. They had a few different prizes, and we won like a 2-night stay at a hotel in downtown Dallas. So,
oh wow, that's awesome. That's really cool.
Not so bad for thrift store shopping and some like talcum powder in the hair, you know.
Binksy has impressions are a hidden talent. We found this out when we were drafting for one of our leagues in the voice chat. He started just whipping out some of his best impressions. So we'll have to touch on that at some point.
I do okay.
How are your leagues going so far?
Man, I have just been snake bitten with injuries and super slow starters. Like across the board, I've been super handcuffed because the actual talent on my roster is really good. It's not like it's not an area where I'm like, this is a droppable player. I'm just trying to wait out like a bunch of super slow starts, and then the players that weren't starting slow are like season-ending injuries. So it's been a rough start, but from what I know about the playoff schedule and the composition of my rosters, I really just kind of got to get to like 500 hockey and then ride it out for a while. So I feel okay about it, but it hurts right now though.
Yeah, that's fair. I think in the Cupful and the 5-hole league that I'm in, I think I'm 1 and 2 in both, and things just haven't been going right for me. I spent draft capital on Kyle Connor and Sam Reinhart in multiple leagues, and that's been really hurting me. So
I think that's going to be the new name of one of my teams. Actually, just going to turn them to the buy low candidates.
Buy low candidates, yeah, that's a good call for sure. Well, thanks again for leaving us a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you haven't and you're enjoying our content, please just take a second and leave us a review. We would greatly appreciate it. Also, check out the Apples and Ginos Discord server. It's a great place to talk fantasy hockey, get your questions answered, and also receive alerts when new Apples and Ginos content drops. So this is Midweek Moves. We're here on a Wednesday of week 4 to talk about schedule maximization for the rest of the week and who you should be adding, dropping, selling high, or buying low. So the name of the game this week is to avoid the heavy nights. So the heavy nights are very heavy this week, especially going into the end of the week now. And the off nights are extremely light. So there's only 4 teams that have 3 games remaining for the rest of the week from Thursday to Sunday. That's Anaheim, Carolina, Detroit, and Florida. Carolina has 2 games on Friday and Sunday, which are the off nights over the next 4 nights. And they're the only team in the league that has that. So that gives them essentially the best schedule by far out of anybody. Also out of those 4 teams, they have the best schedule next week with 3 games and 1 off night. And none of those teams really have very good schedules next week, but Carolina does have the best. So they're definitely the choice. So I have a couple guys that I'm interested in from Carolina. So the first one that I think you should take a look in adding is Seth Jarvis. So he is 44% rostered. He has only 3 points so far, but he does have the deployment. He's line 1, power play 2. He's 4th on the team in individual scoring chances 4 per 60. And this is a team, Carolina generates a ton offensively. So the fact that he's 4th on the team is pretty significant. So I think Seth Jarvis has been a little bit stake bit. So if he's available in your league, I would definitely try to see if you can pick him up as a stream for the rest of the week. The other guy, and this is a guy probably not a lot of people know about, the only reason I've heard his name is because he was a throw-in in a Leaf trade a few years ago. I think he maybe played 1 game for them and then didn't didn't see the ice again, but it's Stefan Noesen. So he is 0% rostered in Yahoo. So he is available. He's an interesting option in a deep league. I'm in a couple, so he's a guy that I'm definitely looking at. He only has 10-18 and on average time on ice. He plays on the fourth line, but he's playing right now on power play 1, which is crazy. He's playing with Svechnikov, Martin H's, Brent Burns, and Sebastian Aho on power play 1. It's like one of these things is not like the other situations. But he actually has 5 points in 8 games, and he has ridiculous rate stats. He's second on the team in individual shot attempts per 60 with 21.84, and first in individual scoring chances for per 60 with 14.56. And he's way ahead of everyone on the team in high danger scoring chances for per 60 by far. He's a really, really interesting player. He has 19 shots on goal through 8 games, despite only playing 10-18. So a guy that likes to shoot, a guy that's getting an opportunity on PP1, and a guy that's super available. So he's pretty interesting. It seems like Rod Brindamore, it's funny, he's 5th on the team in scoring, and the other 4 guys that are ahead of him are the other guys on PP1. So it's like Rod Brindamore's like, I don't know, just pick who are our top 5 scorers. We'll just put them on PP1. And then he's like, Stefan Noesen. All right, throw him out there.
If that's what it says.
But honestly, he does look like there's something there. So definitely, if there's not a lot available, which in a lot of my leagues there's not, he's a guy that you can definitely look at. What do you think?
No, I want to further harp on Carolina. Those are both excellent picks. In competitive leagues, I don't really expect Jarvis to be sitting around, right?
No.
Like you're probably picking him up beside the schedule if Jarvis is available for you. I'm a really big fan of what's going on with Noesen. What kind of scares me is the shot rate stats are super recent, right? And as Brindamore does, they've just been a whirlwind of lines thus far. Like Kotkaniemi was getting like serious burn, like for a 4-game stretch 4 games ago, right? And now not so much. And now Noesen is getting on power play 1, and he's getting serious burn. The same thing has been true of Jordan Martinook. He got considerably higher minutes over these last 4 games. So I'm obviously always trepidatious about what the Canes are going to do with their lines. Talent-wise, it seems to be Noesen. Shot rate dandy. It's hard to argue with that, and especially at 0%. I think I feel a bit safer in rostering a player for this upcoming stretch where you expect them to be a starter for you for most of these games for them. I feel a little bit better rostering Kotkaniemi, and he's only 3%. You know what I mean? We're talking about bottom of the barrel guys, and with them having clearly the best slate, but not necessarily a really obvious second tier, I think all of these guys are interesting options. I feel a little bit safer for the entire stretch going with Jesperi, but if you're just wanting to kind of see what's happening with the Canes and what can pop off, Noesen is probably the one you want. It is worth noting before we move on, though, these prime schedule games are all against super tough opponents: Tampa, Buffalo, Toronto, Florida, Edmonton, and Colorado. A super rested Colorado at that. Like, it's going to be a tough slate for them. So if you're taking those Flyers, I think those are decent ones.
Yeah, for sure. I think to touch on that, I have faith in Carolina. I think Carolina is an elite team, and that they bring it every single night. So I don't have concerns about tough opponents. But yeah, sorry, you continue.
Well, I mean, the team itself, you're absolutely right. I'm completely in agreement with that. Like, Carolina themselves may not have a tough time with that, but these second tier guys may get washed out a little bit, having to play against upper level talent, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
My ad for this week, Philip Hronek, only 25% owned, which was kind of surprising given the production and the deployment thus far. 6 assists in 9 games. 3 of them were on the power play. It's averaging 22 a night plus with the top power play exposure. He's going to cross the 300-game threshold this year. It's kind of surprising that he's so young in his career based on just what they're deploying him right now, right? As just by the by, today is his 25th birthday, so happy birthday, Philip. He is adding a helpful amount of peripheral trio, so it's not just the point production that you're banking on. And I thought it was really important to note, even when they have gotten steamrolled in games recently, he is staying positive on the sheet. So I really don't see his hold slipping on the deployment, because when things have gone south for them, they're not going south on him, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit stronger of a case than I felt him versus Sider as far as what's going on with the Red Wings. So I'm a little bit more excited about it than I used to be. And I think it's certainly a decent add with the slate they've got.
Yeah, I like Hronek a lot. He's a guy that I've streamed in one of my leagues this week, a league where 3 of my defensemen went down to injury, so had to scramble a little bit. But yeah, he's a great streamer for sure. I think I'm looking at Daily Faceoff right now, and it looks like, actually, I don't know if this is right because Daily Faceoff isn't always entirely correct, but it looks like Sider may have moved back on the first power play.
That would make me so happy if that were true.
I know. Yeah, that's great. I have tons of Sider stock. I think I have them in 3 leagues, so that would be nice. But yeah. So, but that being said, they're not afraid to put him on PP1, and he has played there a bit this year. So I'm still interested regardless. So let's talk about some drops. So my drop this week is for it's Ryan O'Reilly from the St. Louis Blues. So he only has 1 goal and 0 assists in 8 games this year. St. Louis has 4 games next week, but after Thursday this week, they don't play at all the rest of the week. So if you're looking for streaming candidates for the end of this week, and you're looking for somebody to drop, O'Reilly is probably the guy. I think he does have. I looked at his underlying numbers. There is positive regression coming. His on-ice shooting percentage is super low. His shooting percentage is super low. He is producing like a similar amount to the way that he's produced in terms of shot generation over his career. But it's just not going in for him, and not going in for anyone in St. Louis. So yeah. They're just in a bit of a funk right now. That being said, schedule sucks the rest of the week. So if you are trying to add a guy like Kotkaniemi just for games played, wait until O'Reilly is done his Thursday game and then drop him right away, because that's easy, no problem. Yeah. Do you have anyone or what do you think? What do you think about O'Reilly?
So, it doesn't seem like the Blues have had a schedule that's helpful in getting them into a groove, and it's still not going to happen the rest of the week. O'Reilly and Rob Thomas both have been in pressers calling for patience and better play from themselves, from the veterans on the lineup, right? Kyrou has been cold, just recently got a couple in. Booch hasn't been truly available. I think there's certainly better play coming. And they do have a Monday and Tuesday back-to-back coming next week. So put it on the back burner for next week. Ryan O'Reilly says the team has been fighting it a bit, right? So yep. I think they're overdoing it, but schedule-wise, he's definitely a droppable player for me, for sure.
Yeah.
My drop for this week, this one actually kind of hurts because this was somebody I bet on in a lot of drafts.
Me too.
I think you got to drop Elvis Merzlikins. 46% rostered right now and dropping. He's dropped 4 out of the last 6 starts, and badly, right? Both wins, he gave up 3 goals on a bad save percentage and got bailed out by the team scoring goals for them. He's been pulled once in the first period after 5 shots, and then gave up 11 goals in the next 2 games. So his confidence hasn't rebounded. Korpisalo is returning soon from a hip injury, and I don't love the prospects of Korpisalo, but just the fact that he's coming back is a negative marker for Elvis. And Columbus has a league-leading 16 back-to-backs this year. So regardless of how he is playing, he's still going to be splitting a bunch of these starts going forward. With the social media response from he and his wife, I feel like things are getting pretty vile in Blue Jacket circles.
Yeah, it's
and
ugly.
that's not good for goalie confidence, right? There's a lot of positions in hockey where you can kind of go out and silence the haters, but you have to play really well for a long stretch as a tendy to silence the haters. And he's got a ton of haters right now. And then on top of that, 4 games in 2 weeks, and 2 of them are in Finland, right? So,
oh, yikes.
Who knows where his head is going to be at? Like, not going to be able to catch a groove. Got a back-to-back slate against him in his favor. His backup is coming back healthy. Like, for me, the experiment is over. It's a drop for me.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I spent a bit on Elvis Merzlikins. It's not a lot, obviously, but worth noting. So just look this up because you said they were playing in Finland, but Jonas Korpisalo is Finnish. So chances are he's probably going to be starting one of those games. You said they're back-to-back for those games?
They are back-to-back for those games, okay. And then almost a full week of dead air before they play again. Yeah. And they only play twice next week, right? So, and I mean, I've heard it in the air that teams have trouble coming back from these trips, right? So,
Nashville's been terrible since they came back from Czechia. So, you're right. That totally happens. San Jose has been brutal. I mean, I think that no one really expected them to be that great, but Nashville's been atrocious. So I'm definitely Merzlikins is a guy that I have dropped in at least one of my leagues, which was unfortunate. I was excited about Columbus. Columbus in general has just really disappointed me. But Korpisalo, he's a guy that I think I don't know. I don't want to make any bold statements, but he's a guy that has had success in the past, was a straight tandem with Merzlikins before, has had a history of playing extremely well. Last year was one of the worst goaltenders in the league and is coming back from hip surgery. So obviously take that with a grain of salt.
It doesn't look great.
But the door is open, right?
It's wide
the door's
open.
They're looking for some help there in goal because Merzlikins just isn't cutting it right now. I support that drop for sure. So we'll talk about a couple guys that are doing very well right now that you should sell high on. So my sell high candidate is Rasmus Dahlin. So he has 12 points in 9 games as a defenseman. I mean, we'll talk about another defenseman that has more than that in 9 games so far this year a little bit later. I think there's a mailbag question on him, but for now we'll talk about Dahlin. He's got 12 points in 9 games. He has a 19.4% shooting percentage, which is insanely high for a defenseman. Not to mention three times as high as he's had in his career at the very least, if not more. His on-ice shooting percentage is a little bit high with 14.69%. That's pretty high. He's got a slight uptick in time on ice. He's shooting a lot more, generating a little more than his career averages in general, but I don't think that it's 12 points in 9 games or like above a point per game pace. It's not like a Roman Josi type situation here. Could he have a Roman Josi like season? Maybe. I don't know. Like he's got that first overall pick pedigree. People are getting all excited about it. I got my Buffalo Sabres hat on. This is actually the first time I've ever worn this. It's
the debut.
It's a hat that I got for like $7 or something at a sports store in the area, just because I thought it looked sick.
That is a sick hat.
There's never been an occasion to wear it, so I just felt like wearing it today. Buffalo's got a good schedule this week, so there you go. But yeah, I think he's a good candidate to sell high on.
I definitely agree. You talk about the comparison to Josi. Josi had a field of people around him that were also playing out of their minds. He's an offensively talented dude. There's no reason to think he's not capable of these things, but is he expected to do them? That's saying another thing. And especially if we're looking at career averages, like this is not just a bit much, it's a lot much, right? Like he's really doing it. I would definitely be selling high on Dahlin in every format except for Dynasty, right? Like,
yeah,
let Buffalo flesh out another season or two before you decide what he is or isn't. But in a redraft, in a keeper league, yeah, Send him out of town. I also am selling high on a very successful defenseman. Hampus Lindholm is 79% owned. It's just a little bit low.
That's high.
Considering.
I guess considering his power play 1 status right now.
Considering the current state, anyway.
Yeah.
He's only reached double-digit power play points once in his career. He's got 4 power play points in his last 4 games and 11 points overall in 10 games. Wow. He added 3 assists and a goal in the OT win versus Pittsburgh. Like, he was everywhere. But McAvoy has stripped the non-contact jersey and will be back much sooner than expected.
I didn't know that.
So, I mean, you got to sell high on a career night before the volume it just falls out, right? Like, there's no reason to think that he couldn't continue to be successful with deployment, but there's no guarantee that he's going to get that deployment, not even close. So I would be selling high before the league around you realizes that McAvoy is coming back and that he's going to lose this value.
Man, yeah, I'm with you there. I didn't realize McAvoy. What are they feeding these Boston Bruins injured players? Like,
I think it might have been more what Boston's team was feeding us instead of what they're feeding the players.
Could be.
I feel like
feels like there's some HGH or some stem cells being thrown around here.
I feel like Monty is just the kind of type to be like, yeah, they're going to be 4 months. And then, 7 weeks later, you're like, oh, are they ready?
It's scary, man. It's scary. And they've been good without Marchand and McAvoy. Marchand, yeah, part of Lindholm's point totals are the last 2 games, their power play has been ridiculous with Marchand back on it. It's been disgusting, like back to the way that it's supposed to be, really. So yeah, I think anyone on that PP1 is going to have success. But yeah, as soon as McAvoy's back, Lindholm is back to just an ordinary defenseman. So I think that's a great sell high candidate.
Back into a pumpkin, as it were. Happy Halloween.
Absolutely. Yeah, essentially, yes. So I have a couple buy low candidates. So I mentioned him when we were talking about Rasmus Dahlin, but Roman Josi, I'll talk about both of them at the same time. So I've got Roman Josi and Oliver Bjorkstrand. So both of them, I mean, when I researched this was yesterday. They each had a goal and 3 assists, so 4 points only this year. Both of them got 2 assists last night each. So they're now up to a whopping 6 points each. Still think they're buy low candidates. They're both top 10 in the league in shots on goal with crazy low shooting percentages. Like, obviously they both only have 1 goal and they're like shooting at ridiculous rates. Bjorkstrand will be considerably easier to acquire. He may even be available. I haven't checked in a while what his status was, but he was only in the 20s in terms of rostership in Yahoo earlier this year. I wouldn't guess that he's that much higher than that or lower. He may even be lower just because he hasn't been producing. But Josi, he's a guy that I almost think that you could flip Rasmus Dahlin for at this point, for those people that were spending high draft capital on Josi. I don't know. It's just an idea to throw out there. But I think there is probably, I mean, Nashville has definitely had some negative regression from last year. This is the regression that we all thought was coming. But I imagine that Roman Josi is probably not going to be, is probably going to increase his scoring pace. And if he's shooting that much, is probably going to be scoring a little bit more. So I think there's some positive regression coming for both of these guys. And I think you should take advantage of some of the managers out there that own them, that are maybe getting a little itchy.
It feels a little weird to say positive regression when talking about Bjorkstrand, because it seems like he's been playing pretty well, right? But just not as well as what did you put in the notes? The fancy stats?
The fancy stats,
as well as the fancy stats would kind of indicate. Someone is going to get left holding the bag in terms of him being on the waiver wire, because it seems like we all feel pretty comfortable in just letting him sit there in leagues.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he's a solid pickup regardless. Yossi, on the other hand, I'm not really sure what to expect. I feel like you still have to pay a super premium for him right now that might keep it from being worth it.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. I do expect him to be better than they have been as a team thus far, even with the expected regression that we all assumed would come and absolutely has. Anytime you can get Yossi, you're happy.
Yeah.
You're happy. You know what you're getting when you get Yossi. Doesn't even matter what the team is doing. My buy low for this week is Jordan Kyrou.
Mm-hmm.
Dude is just frozen. Getting a solid 19-plus average time on ice, which is up from last year. So I really like that. His turnover rate is super high. So I do not like that on such a well-balanced team. I feel like it's really possible that he could get kind of slugged down some lines. He has been getting top line deployment until a push to the third line with Thomas recently and a bump to power play too. So I have to believe the Blues' sole all-star from last year returns to form. I don't think his 2 goals on 3 shots versus Montreal was an aberration. Like, I feel like they need him as much as he needs to get that top line deployment to kind of take off into what we all expect him to be production wise. It's kind of worrisome what I've seen from them thus far, but this last push, even with him getting pushed down the lineup and then kind of blowing up a little bit, is a positive indicator for me, right? Like it feels like sending a message to him, not where they're sending him to play for the rest of the season. So I'm really high on them in general, and I'm particularly high on him given that they seem to have no qualms with sticking him with high minutes throughout what has been a terrible stretch for them.
Yep. Yeah, I think we talked about it a lot last year, but St. Louis is a team. Craig Berube, he's playing with the Yahtzee Cup. That's what I like to say about this team. That top 9 gets shuffled around all the time, even when they're playing well. It just seems like he's shaking up the Yahtzee Cup and throwing it, and whoever's with whoever, that's what the lines are. So I wouldn't be too concerned about his decrease or his move down to line 3. Same goes with Robert Thomas. We'll talk about that a little later. But I'm not concerned about Kyrou. So yeah, if he's available out there, I would try and buy low on this guy.
Something to touch on for the schedule leading into next week, because your streamer options for these last few days of this week are a little bit limited. Your jumpstart, if you have a handle on your matchup or if you didn't catch any of these guys that you feel comfortable with streaming, Monday and Tuesday ads, back-to-backs, Islanders, Edmonton, Calgary, and St. Louis. And for off-night ads early in the week, Monday and Wednesday, Washington plays in both of those days and has 4 games all on off nights next week.
Washington's the team to stream from next week for sure. Yeah.
Of note for next week.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to touch a little bit on the 0G situation midweek here. I write an article. If you didn't know, I write an article weekly. Comes out usually on Sunday. Called 0G to Victory. It's basically I put out the 0G power rankings for this week. So that's taking all the goalies that are sub 50% rostered in Yahoo and then ranking them based on likelihood of volume of starts for the upcoming week, and then factoring in recent performance and quality of opponents, all that type of stuff, just to figure out who you should be picking up, and just assessing situations that where there's goaltending controversies or potential goaltending controversies, and just to try and find these 0G gems that are always out there every year. So right now, we may be seeing Eunice Corpusalo, like I mentioned. Maybe he's a guy that keep an eye out for his name. Maybe Matt Murray in Dallas. New Matt Murray.
What did Yahoo know?
I want to know. Yahoo Matt Murray. Yeah, the guy that was ranked above the real Matt Murray. I don't know. Maybe he'll play more than one game this year. We
He's
can't
got
say
to
the
have a
same for.
sick vendetta against the quote unquote real Matt Murray.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah. I don't know.
you had to be 5 years older than me, didn't you?
But he will be dressing. We don't know if he'll be playing, but he will be dressing officially for the Stars. So it's interesting. But so a couple guys I want to touch on. So James Reimer, man, this is a guy that has always been. I mean, he was a 0G gem last year. He was a guy that people were streaming and holding. He plays exceptionally well on bad teams all the time. He has his whole career. He dragged the Toronto Maple Leafs to the playoffs in 2013, a team that had no business being there, and almost won them a playoff series. Like this guy thrives when he's getting pelted with shots and has no defense in front of him. I like him as a guy that makes a ton of saves, a guy that doesn't allow a lot of goals, and maybe even get a few wins here. Maybe if Erik Karlsson keeps scoring hat tricks, he's gonna get some goal support. So yeah, I like James Reimer. I wrote about him. I think it's about time that we respected him a little more. He's got a game against Anaheim, and then a game against, I believe, the Panthers coming up for the end of the week. So he might be an interesting option if you need a goalie. And then the other situation is Vitek Vanacek. So he's a guy that I had expected them to ride because it's kind of been the way that New Jersey has gone this year, in terms of when they have a goalie that's playing well, they keep riding him until he has a shitty game, and then they move on to the next goalie. But Mackenzie Blackwood actually got a start the other night. I still expect for Vitek to play probably the next two games. I imagine that was just to give him a break. Blackwood looked fine. They got the win. Wasn't super busy as the New Jersey goaltenders aren't seeming to be super busy. They're not. They don't allow a lot of shots. They have the puck essentially the entire game, but I still think Vitek will probably get the next two starts against Edmonton and Calgary, I believe it is. So I still like Vitek. I still think he's a guy that you can pick up, and he's available in a lot of leagues. So that would be. I mean, there's no real stock in terms of the games that have happened this week. I don't think anyone's stock is really dropping or rising. I guess Stuart Skinner, there was a lot of conversation about, is there a big goaltender controversy in Edmonton, because he had started 2 of the last 3 games. Jack Campbell started the other night. He, allowed a few goals, but Edmonton outscored their problems. So I don't know. We'll see. That situation is still kind of up in the air. We'll see who they start over these next 2 games. The jury's still out on the Stuart Skinner situation.
I like all 3 of those options.
Yeah, that's
quality players in good situations. And San Jose has not been nearly as bad as you would believe from all of the clamor. Like their shot for percentage is right at 50%. Mm-hmm. They're giving up the 10th fewest shots against per game.
Yeah.
So they're not a terrible option. And he, like you said, is a perennial good goalie on a bad team. Either one of the pairing in New Jersey looks good to me. I think of the 2 of them, I just have preference to Vanacek, but
me too.
Maybe that's just recency bias. But yeah, I think overall it looks really good. I don't know what to think about Skinner considering all of the money that they're paying Campbell, but we're also talking about a Campbell who has, pretty regularly gotten hurt or just kind of fell off a cliff play-wise. So to see Skinner do well in his window it makes me feel really good about pulling the trigger on him later when things become a little bit more obvious, right?
Yeah, and you've also got an Edmonton team that needs to win, right? They need to win now, so they got to get that goalie situation figured out. So we'll see who comes out on top there, or whether they're just going to have more of a shared net than people expected.
Okay, as we move it in the mailbag, I've got to run and use the bathroom, or I'm going to lose my mind. But I'll be right back.
All right, no worries. All right, well, we will jump in. So I'm gonna chat about a question from I don't know whatever man. His question is, or he or she, I'm not really sure. What is going on with Lucas Raymond? So Lucas Raymond's a guy that I drafted in the Cupful, and he's really struggled. He had a hot game the other night. where he had 2 goals. I unfortunately benched him for that game, so egg on my face in that situation. I don't really know what's going on with Lucas Raymond, to be honest. He's not generating a ton, but wasn't generating a ton last year either. He was just in a really good situation, and had hot streaks and cold streaks. He's getting the opportunity. For last week, we talked about him. He had been relegated to power play 2. He'd been moved down the lineup, wasn't playing with Larkin anymore. Now he's back. He's on PP1 again. They've got the situation that I had hoped that they would, or the deployment that I'd hoped for PP1 for them, which is Larkin, Raymond, Mo Seider, Perron, and Kubalik. That's the way it should be. Stack up that power play 1. And yet he's still not doing a whole lot. Detroit has they're one of the teams that have 3 games the rest of the week, so I'm going to be watching Raymond closely. But I'm just not sure, man. I don't know really what's going on with him. But he is getting to the point where there may be, depending on your league, there may be options to stream in for him. But I'm not sure that I'm quite there yet. I think if he didn't have that game where he scored those 2 goals, I'd maybe be leaning a little bit more towards dropping him, but we'll see. I don't know, man. What do you think was going on with Lucas Raymond?
Honestly, it's so hard to tell right now, right? Because I believe in the Red Wings as a whole, and I believe in his ability, and they don't seem to be going away from him. And just like you said, if he hadn't had that outburst, I probably would have fell closer to the chopping block. But like right at that moment where we were all like, is this for real? He blew up, right? Yeah. And then he went right back to bed. So we're like, was that for real? Like, we're all in a holding pattern. And what troubles me most about Raymond is that the Red Wings themselves seem a little bit content to tread water right now while they wait for Bertuzzi. They, who knows, wait about Vrana while they figure out what's going on with Roenick versus Seider. Like, it seems to be all kind of in flux. And oddly enough, with the exception of Bertuzzi, it doesn't really seem to be related to injuries. Like, to me, they seem like a team that is just going to kind of do what they're doing until something obvious says to them, this is the way we've got to play right now. It's like the same thing with Kubalik, right? Like, he has made it obvious that he has to play for them right now, and that's what they're doing. And they're just kind of waiting for a player to pop off and be like, yo, I'm the guy. And Raymond certainly has the talent to be that guy. So Raymond is one of these players I'm talking about on my teams where I'm like, this player feels certainly good enough to hold on to through a rough patch. So maybe I take this L right now and win later. But you're absolutely right. It's getting a lot closer to the chopping block. And without that outburst, if we were seeing nothing all the way through this, I would really, really lean heavily on a drop right now. But man, it's tough. Like, that is just an elite level offensive player when he's clicking. So I don't know. It's really tough right now in Detroit.
Yeah. I don't know what to say. I'm hoping that they figure it out and that he figures it out as well. Cause like I said, I've got a little bit riding on him. I thought he was going to be a guy that was going to return me a lot of value as a late pick in the cupful, but so far not so good.
Not so surprising considering the team that we expected though to be who they were this season has not been the players that they've been icing, right? They're down a few big talents. So that's just true. Like them, I think I'm going to continue to tread water for as long as I can before I'm forced to make a decision on him.
Yeah, for sure. The Mark Skinner, our regular, should we be concerned with Binnington and St. Louis? There's a couple dud games in a row for him now. St. Louis in general may be the bigger question. And then I guess we'll group in, this is another St. Louis question, and it kind of goes along with the conversation we were having about Ryan O'Reilly, but should we be concerned, and Jordan Kyrou actually for that matter, should we be concerned on Robert Thomas with the Blues not playing super well right now and now on line 3? So So like I said before, Craig Berube likes to use the Yahtzee Cup. He likes to change his lines up all the time, even when they're playing well. I don't anticipate Robert Thomas will be sticking on line 3. I believe he has 6 points in 8 games. I looked this up because someone had a question earlier and tagged us in the Discord earlier this week. I answered a question there about Robert Thomas, but yeah, I mean, he's a guy that's still getting scoring chances the way that he does in his career. He's not a guy that shoots a lot. So if you were drafting him, expecting him to rack up shots on goal, not a guy that does that. He gets assists and he relies on his teammates to score. He makes plays, gets scoring chances, but he relies a lot on his teammates. And right now, there's a lot of guys that are snake bit right now on the Blues. So I think things will turn around for Robert Thomas. But that being said, his production isn't terrible in terms of points and in terms of what you expect from him. I'm not really a big Robert Thomas guy, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't really like that. I don't like players that bring you just assists and nothing else. But I mean, that's the guy that he is. I don't know, man. What do you think about the Thomas situation?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head with Robert Thomas, right? Like we play in such like an array of different league types, and virtually none of them are like points only, right? Where he is considerably more valuable.
Yep.
I like Rob Thomas. I am happy to stream Rob Thomas in what I think are plus matchups that work for me. But he's kind of perennially a streamer level guy, right? Unless he's on an absolute like heater like he was to end the year last year. But it feels like St. Louis is kind of their Dallas of this year, where Dallas had the super slow start schedule-wise last year, and it took them a really long time to find a groove, right?
That's the other factor too.
Yeah, I really feel like what is wrong with St. Louis is that they haven't been able to hit the same stride that everybody else in the league has been able to hit, right?
There's been a lot of long breaks in between games. Yeah. And even so right now, like we said, like they have 3 nights off after Thursday before a heavy week next week. So maybe they pick it up next week. We'll see.
I feel like next week is the test for them, right?
Yeah.
They've got 4 games,
a litmus test,
and it's against pretty quality talent for the most part, right? Like I think the worst of their slate is the Sharks, and like I said, the Sharks are not a terrible team, top to bottom. Like they're punching above their weight a little bit, but they're playing all right. Like, should we be concerned with Binnington? I'm always concerned with Binnington. The dude's a head case, and for him to go on a cold streak is really bad for him, right? Like, he had trouble. Yeah. He has trouble rebounding when the team as a whole is not playing well, and when they're playing really well, he's kind of a world beater, right? We saw it in the Cup run. We've seen it for stretches across his time with the team. Like a couple of dud games in a row for him doesn't really scare me. His tandem partner is not challenging him.
No,
they're going to be a good team. Like I don't know that I'm super excited to hold on to him. It's not a must hold for me with Binnington, but the outlook for them is pretty good. I want to see him play this next slate and then make that judgment about whether he's not a player you want on your roster at all, right?
Yeah.
I feel pretty good about St. Louis overall, and maybe I have rose-colored glasses, but I feel like they just need a better opportunity to get going.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you there. That's a huge factor. Like, look at the Islanders last year. The Islanders had that huge road trip while their arena situation got figured out, and they were awful, and that sank their season. Like they played really well after that, but it was too little too late. So I think this is probably one of those situations. I think they had one game in the first week, and then they had 2 this week, and now it's going to get a little bit heavier for them. So hopefully they figure it out. I'm not too concerned about Binnington. I mean, Binnington's not a guy that I'm really a big fan of. We've talked about it a number of times on this show. For the same reasons. He's crazy. But looking at his game log, those 2 games are by far the worst this year. He's been above his worst game in his previous 4 was a 9-14, and he had a shutout against the Oilers in one game. So, I mean, I'm not terribly concerned about Binnington. If you see a bit of a longer stretch of games where he's getting pulled, maybe then it's time to hit the panic button. But we'll just exercise some patience for now. So the next one we have is from Zach Attack, and that's, does Erik Karlsson have a chance of keeping this production up? So Erik Karlsson, I believe, has 7 points in his last 2 games. He's turning back the clock. I calculated his 82 game pace so far because he is tied for 6th in the league in scoring right now and is 2nd in goals with 9. He has 9 goals in, I believe, 9 games. And his 82 game pace is 137 points. So if we take that question literally, no, he will not get 137 points. However, I do think that this is a good sign that Erik Karlsson still is Erik Karlsson, which is potentially a guy that can play at a point per game pace. So that's great. Will he stay healthy? I'm not sure. He's shown that he's injury prone, but he has looked really, really good. He's really it's cool to see. Like, I'm excited for him. He's a player that I've liked from afar for a long time, even though he was a longtime Senator and often made the Leafs look stupid. But he's a guy that I really respect. And is just one of the great offensive defensemen of all time. So I'm happy that he is potentially figuring it out. I don't know that he'll stay at this pace. I mean, he won't stay at this pace, but I'm going to enjoy it while it lasts.
So before we went live, I was joking with you that even if you're going to extrapolate this ridiculous rate, you should probably do it at something closer to like 60, 63, 64 games rather than 82.
Yeah.
But I think it is super important to note, if we're talking about his pace, that his shot total for the first 6 games of the season was a total of 7, right?
Yeah.
He had 7 3 games ago. He's got 12, 17 in the last 3, right? So these rate stats are especially high. Like, can we expect this? No, we can't expect this. We can't expect this for a variety of reasons. Now, he's still Erik Karlsson. Like, that mustache lives forever. Like, he's a quality player, and when he's on the ice, he's going to do well. But I think he's probably somewhere between the 1-2 shots game of the first 6 games of the season, and then the 7-5-5 slate that we've seen recently, right? Like, what you want for him is him to shoot it, and he's probably about half that.
Yeah, we were talking about sell high candidates. I think Erik Karlsson is a sell high candidate. Definitely a good one.
Not me. I'm not buying Erik Karlsson.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, someone in the Discord, I think it was Duchase, said that he just traded him for Kyle Connor. So that's the type of situation that you want to take advantage of. Like, that
His reply was nice.
That is very nice. That's very nice. Kyle Connor's been brutal so far, but he'll figure it out. Kyle Connor has 1 goal so far this year, and it's an empty netter in the first game. So not good. Not good at all.
Bonus, but he's barely been on the bench, man.
Yeah, I know. He's playing. He's still playing on the top line. He's getting great deployment, but just not figuring it out. And then our last question is from AbsFan54. Hold, stream, or drop, or as we like to say, stream, save, sucks. Jarvis, Teravainen, Pacioretty. What do you think, bud?
Oh, man. I didn't believe in Pacioretty to begin with. And then just a heinous injury to begin the year. I don't think there's any chance that he comes back and is effective for any team, much less one where he has to slot in with Brind'Amour and play all out. And that's not going to happen. I'm not holding it. It's not something I'm holding out hope for on an IR slot on my team. Like, I'm not like trying to snap him up off the waiver wire. That is a auto sucks for me in that. Teravainen is the hold for me. We're just talking about a different tier of player than Seth Jarvis, right? Like, he has not shown up to this season, and Brendan Moore is kind of putting the screws to him for it. But we're not talking about the same tier of player between Turbo and Jarvis. And I really like Jarvis. I think he has an excellent career ahead of him. But at their peaks, Turbo is way higher up. And the production just hasn't been there. Like, I don't know about Brendan Moore and like sending messages, because it seems like he just kind of tells the players what it is, and it's not subversive and line changes or anything like that. Like, he just tells them what the score is. But Jarvis has also not been playing super well, right? So I mean, it's an absolute hold for me on Teravainen in a few leagues, literally, and a stream for Jarvis. Although I do like Jarvis, and I have for a while.
Yeah, I would agree on that. I think it's an interesting question because if all were healthy, Pacioretty's the obvious hold. He's a fantasy monster. He's a shot generation monster. He's among the league leaders when he's healthy every year, and just is an elite goal scorer still. He just can never stay healthy. So, as for this season, I know a lot of people have him in their IR plus spots or their IR spots. It sounds like he's going to be, unless he's eating whatever Marchand and McAvoy are eating, it sounds like it's going to be pretty damn close to the end of the season before he is healthy enough to play. And with Achilles injuries, I think I've mentioned this before on the show, that's tough to come back from. And so I wouldn't anticipate him to be the same Pacioretty coming back, especially not a guy that you're banking on and holding a roster spot for, especially on teams with limited IR spots, to come back for your fantasy playoffs and just go apeshit. I don't think that is. I
think there are teams on in the NHL where that's way more possible than it is in Carolina, right? Like, Carolina is not going to be like, we need you. Like, they're just going to be like, hey, there you are. Play 12 minutes on the fourth line and see if you can spark the fourth line.
I think it's much more likely for them to add a bunch at the deadline to get up to the cap, leave him on an LTIR until the playoffs, and then bring him back because his salary, he has quite a bit of salary that goes against the cap as well, right? So
that is a huge point. That is exactly what they're going to do, regardless if he's healthy or not.
Pacioretty had a bit of a setback, won't be back until May 1st. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's just too convenient, and I think it'll probably happen. But so obviously that would make him a non-factor. So he's my obvious sucks, even though he doesn't suck. My hold would be Teravainen, like you said. I think he has more experience. Jarvis obviously, I think, has potential to be a more dynamic player than Teravainen, but Teravainen's Aho's guy, right? And Aho is the guy in Carolina. So I think despite his struggles to start the year, I'm still holding Teravainen and I'm streaming Jarvis, just like I mentioned before in the ads section, baby. And by the way, I just checked the score of the Leafs game. It's over. They finally won a game. And JT, good luck, had a hat trick.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So that was not intentional. Actually, I had no idea that was going to happen.
I had a feeling they were gonna awaken a sleeping giant on this one.
Yeah, John Tavares turning back the clock as well. He's alive.
I actually just won on my underdog mania.
Hell yeah, dude!
Hammering the Leafs tonight.
What a night!
Let's go.
Thank you all for joining us. Check out the Apples and Genos Discord server. Shout outs to the band there for providing our music. Their Spotify link is in the episode description. Give us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter. Binksy is at Binklemania. Nate is at Apples Genos. I'm at JustJoshin41. Blake is at Blake Creamer SE.
Mm-hmm.
Please practice safe stats and happy streaming. Have a
Fancy
good one, folks.
stats.
Fancy stats, baby.
Good night, world. I was so disappointed when you